Welcome into Two Guys on a Mic. I am Scott, joined by my brother Mike. Today is December 12th. If you are not subscribed, please subscribe below. On today's show, we're going to go ahead and talk about the AFC, NFC playoff picture. We're going to make our predictions, who's going to be in, who's going to be out. We're going to break down the Ohtani contract, which is a pretty significant contract. But first, I'd like to jump into another signing that might go a little bit under the radar here for the Giants, Mike. They signed Jung-Ho Lee from the KBO, which is the South Korea Professional League. This kid, now he was the first player ever in KBO history to skip their minors. He went straight from the draft to the professionals. Originally, he was a shortstop, got moved out to center field because at the time, Hong-So Kim, the second baseman for the San Diego Padres, he was playing shortstop in that league, and obviously they weren't going to move him. So they went ahead and shoved Lee out to center field. Phenomenal. He has 5 Golden Gloves out there. Now, listen to his batting averages, Mike. 2018, he batted .355. In 19, he batted .336. 20, .333. 21, .360. 2022, .349. And then last year, he only played 86 games. He hit .318. He does have an MVP under his belt. He owns, in 7 seasons, he owns a .992 fielding percentage, which is just outstanding. Now, here is the dilemma with this. The Giants went ahead and felt comfortable giving him a 6-year, $113 million contract. But over there in the KBO, they average velocity out there is 89 miles an hour, which is going to be a huge difference, as you know, that's a lot of breaking balls for a lot of these pitchers here in American.
There's a lot of breaking balls that are faster than that.
No, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, you got guys like Spencer Strider who's gonna throw you a breaking ball at like 92 miles an hour. So he's gonna have an adjustment, but at least while he makes the hitting adjustment, he's going to provide the Giants with just great defense, and you can never knock on a guy for just playing good defense. So he's also quick. He's going to steal some bases. Your opinion, would you have given him a shorter-term contract knowing that he hasn't faced, the type of pitching that he's going to face? Or do you think maybe the Giants saw something in him to where they're just like, okay, we feel comfortable. We're just going to go ahead and just sign you to 6 years?
I think a lot of it comes down to the structure of the contract. If the Giants have a way to get out of it after 3 years, if they find that it's not working out, I don't think the details of the contract have really come out yet, other than just the years and the money value. So that's something to look into as well. They must have seen something, like you said. I mean, if nothing else, his fielding alone. If he's able to save runs back out in the outfield, that's a huge impact immediately. But yeah, and I do see what you're saying. Yeah, there is cause for concern on the batting side.
Yeah, we don't know what's going to happen with that, but I do wish this young man good luck. But with that, let's go ahead and jump into this Ohtani contract now. Obviously, everyone knows about the Ohtani contract, 10 years, $700 million. Now he's deferred for the first 10 years. The Dodgers only have to pay him $2 million, which is huge. Because one of the things about, baseball is there's no salary cap, but there is a luxury tax. Now, there's 4 levels of luxury tax with MLB, and I'll go ahead and break it down. So if you're 20, so this year the luxury starts off at $237 million. Okay, so once you go over that, for your first $20 million, you're going to pay a 50% luxury tax. So if you go $20 million over, you got to pay an extra $10 million on top of that. For the second tier, you're going to pay 62%. On top of that $40 million. Now, this is where things start getting interesting. On the third tier, you're going to pay 95% for being $60 million over, and your first draft pick that you have available to your team drops by 10 spots, which can be huge because obviously someone like the Dodgers is going to finish on the back end of that draft, basically lose out on the first-round draft pick. And then after that, the fourth tier, which is the final tier, anything after that, anything over $297 million, you pay 110% on that. So it can get quite expensive, I think, once you hit, even once you hit that second tier, it starts getting a little expensive. So
yeah, 62%.
Yeah. So with Shohei doing this, I like to say that he took the Tom Brady route. He is obviously showing that he cares more about winning than money. And then another side note, Ohtani is the biggest moneymaker out off the field. So even though he's only getting paid $2 million, he makes a ton of money off the field with all of his endorsements. He's obviously probably the most popular baseball player, I'd actually say, in the world at this point. And he doesn't need more than $2 million a year because he's getting all this other money. So one of the things that happened today is the best pitcher coming out of Japan. I mean, this guy, if you watch the World Baseball Classic, this guy's going to end up being the real deal. He's going to probably, whoever signs him, he's going to move into, I believe, the #1 role. Well, I guess it would depend.
Not number 1, number 2, probably depending on what team he goes to.
Yeah, exactly. That's Yamamoto. And this guy met with the Yankees, and yesterday he met with the Yankees. Today he met with the Dodgers. Now, with the Dodgers getting Ohtani, Yamamoto might feel comfortable just going to the Dodgers just because he's going to have, another guy that he's already familiar with, knows. Ohtani, as I stated a couple years ago, that Ohtani was going to, once he was done with the Angels, I really felt he was going to come to the Dodgers because being a foreigner, I think, is just once you become comfortable in the same place, why move? You know what I mean? And Japan's not a very big place. It's just an island. So being able just to stay in California probably just feels more comfortable for him. So him signing with LA is really not surprising. I just thought it was surprising when he decided to defer most of his contract. I mean, he has opened up the doors for the Dodgers to get, Lever. They've been linked to Josh Hader, who's one of the top closers in all of baseball. They can sign Yamamoto. I mean, because really the Dodgers do need pitching. If they're able to do this is bad news for the rest of baseball. I mean,
I just think that this exposed a loophole in baseball. But here's the thing: is this was agreed upon in the collective bargaining agreement.
Well, Scherzer did it when he signed that huge contract with the Nationals. He deferred a lot of his money as well. But believe it or not, report is that this was Ohtani's idea. This was not, the Dodgers did not bring this to Ohtani. Ohtani brought it to the Dodgers and said, hey, I'm willing to go ahead and get paid less money. Let's go ahead and win. And that was one thing he always said when he was with the Angels. He really wanted to win. He's going to be 30 in July. He wants to win now. My question actually to you, Mike, is he's not going to be able to pitch this year. Okay. You saw how much Harper kind of struggled most of last year with his power, having the same surgery. Okay. Harper and Ohtani are the same age. Okay. The Dodgers are betting that he's going to go ahead and be the same power guy, same hitter that he was, in Anaheim. I don't know if that's going to happen.
The difference, Harper is coming off his first Tommy John. Ohtani's coming off his second.
Correct. And he's a little bit older. It takes, 30 years old is still pretty young, but he's about at the age where injuries can kind of linger. It just takes a little bit more time to get healthy. Freddie Freeman is also going to be 35 in September. Okay. So he's in his,
they're all in on their window now.
Yeah, so Freddie Freeman is going to play this year at 34. He is at the age where also his power is going to start declining. Now, I think Freddie Freeman will always hit for average. The guy is just, he's great.
He's a hit machine.
Yeah, but if Ohtani's numbers are down power-wise, Freeman starts to dip a little bit. I'm sorry. I mean, as good as the Dodgers look on paper, I'm not really, if I'm a Dodgers fan, I'm not too excited by the back end of that lineup.
No. And after the Ohtani news broke and we saw a mock lineup of it, I mean, that was the first thing that I sent to you and Matt. Outside their top 3, top 4, there's a huge drop in that lineup.
Another interesting thing is now the Dodgers are only the 5th team in MLB history to have 3 players on their opening day roster that finished in the top 3 in MVP voting. So there's a little stat for you, but I think this is huge if you're basically like in that dugout with Ohtani, the fact that he has still opened up the books for them. But right now, just so you know, right now they're sitting at roughly about 219 million on payroll, even with Ohtani deferring all that money. So I think they have room to maybe sign one more big guy. That I think roughly they probably have about like comfortably they probably are around like the 30 million mark if I had to take a guess, probably comfortably. Unless I mean unless they can sign that Yamamoto, then they may just
Okay, what kind of contract do you think Yamamoto gets per year?
I don't know. What do you think about the 35-40 million mark?
Now, what's to say he doesn't sign and defers?
Then I would just call it cheating.
You know what I mean? It's like, what's to stop these players from now, every one of them just deferring? It's going to catch up at some point.
Yeah, I've been saying it for baseball. Really does need a salary cap. I think at this point, some of these contracts are getting out of hand, and it's just not really fair to the small market teams that just don't have the budget to be able to do this. You know, the teams like the A's and Tampa Bay Rays and stuff, they just don't have the money to keep up with some of these teams. I just don't think it's very fair, you know, to the fans,
Yeah.
to the teams, you know.
And until you can land somebody like that, you're not going to be getting the revenue in to be able to continue. You got to be able to start competing so that you get fans interested, you get fans excited, you get fans back in the stadium.
Yeah.
It's part of the reason why the A's are leaving Oakland.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not everything. Yeah, they had horrible attendance, but I mean, you look at that stadium was horrible. That stadium needed a ton of work.
Yeah.
You know, and yeah, I mean, they're moving to Vegas. Obviously, Vegas is no short on money there.
Yeah.
You know, there's money flowing all over the place.
Yeah, I'm actually interested to see in a couple months what Vegas is going to do as far as World Series odds. If it's going to end up being the Dodgers.
I saw a thing earlier. It said the Dodgers now are a slight favorite over the Braves.
Yeah, which is interesting because I understand that they landed the big bat in Ohtani, but he's not pitching this year, and that was the thing that ended up being the issue for the Dodgers last year was their pitching. Dustin May is not even expected to be back this year. You know that I felt.
I thought he was coming back this year.
They said he's expected not even to pitch in 2024.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's a big blow. Kershaw's.
That's 2 years without May.
Yeah, Kershaw is another year older. You know, they got Buehler, but I really believe, obviously, the Dodgers still believe they're going to win the West. They're going to be one of the top teams. They always are, but I think that they're an injury away from like what happens if Betts, Freeman, or Ohtani goes down. You know, they don't have the.
Wasn't Ohtani hurt last year before the elbow injury?
He had fatigue. He was starting to have shoulder fatigue, and I'm actually wondering if that ended up causing
this injury.
Yeah, because he might have just been pushing through fatigue, and you know, a lot of guys will tell you as a pitcher, sometimes when you get fatigued, your body would just naturally change its mechanics just slightly. An inch of an elbow down, elbow up, whatever to the side, it can do wonders to your body, like in a negative way. So this could have just come from muscle fatigue and him trying to push through stuff, and his body gave out. You know, who knows? He may not even be the same pitcher when he comes back from this. We don't know. You know, the Dodgers are at the same time kind of taking a risk. I understand he's only paid $2 million, but what if it comes down to where he just ends up being a DH? They spent $700 million on DH because eventually they're going to have to pay him the money.
Is there an out?
I doubt it. I don't think he would have signed that contract if there was an out.
Well, and here's the other thing. I saw a report that, you know, everything came out saying that he was going to sign with the Blue Jays, and he was on a plane flying to Toronto and all this and that. Come to find out, that was a false report that was given, and it basically put the Dodgers in a panic mode, and they had an emergency meeting that night and threw out this contract offer.
Yeah. Now, you were saying the Giants offered basically the same contract, correct?
Correct. Yeah. That today came out saying the Giants also had a contract offer to Shohei, and they're saying it was very comparable, if not identical, to this contract.
And again, I think that's just Ohtani. Probably two things probably played into that. One, he's staying in the same area that he's been in since he's come over from Japan. And two, let's be honest, the Dodgers are going to give him a better chance at a World Series than the Giants. Dodgers will spend the money that is going to take to win a championship. As the Giants, they might try to sign one big name, which would have been Ohtani. They also went for Judge. Judge decided to stay with the Yankees. But other than that, I don't really know if the Giants are really willing to go super deep into the luxury tax like the Dodgers are willing to. So I think that's another thing that might have ended up playing a big part to that. So
somebody was talking about too on the whole thing with Ohtani deferring, and I didn't really think about this. If he defers, when he retires, he moves out of California. He's no longer paying California tax on that $68 million.
Well, don't forget, California was trying to pass that law thing where if you're a resident in California, I don't know.
That shit'll never pass.
You never know if that stuff will ever pass. You never know. And for people who don't know, in California, they were talking about basically making a law to where if you moved out of California, you still paid California rate taxes, state taxes for like the next.
For what, like 5 years or something?
It was like 10 years. It might be 5 years, but I think I heard it was something stupid like 10 years. So hopefully that nothing like that ever happens, but we'll see. So with that, let's go ahead. Let's move on to football now.
I was going to say last thing you touched on Aaron Judge and the Yankees. What do you think about Soto going there?
Oh yeah, we didn't even talk about that. I think it's a big problem. The reason I think it's a big problem is because I think he's going to see that short right porch, and he is going to be trying to pull everything. And if you've watched throughout the years, he's at his best when he's trying to go to the opposite field. Aaron Judge is a prime example of that. He doesn't mind going to the opposite field because he's going to knock it over. So he's not afraid of someone throwing a fastball by him, right? So with Soto, he's going to be trying to do the opposite of what Judge does. He's going to be trying to pull everything. And I think it's actually his power numbers might go up a little bit, but I wouldn't be surprised if he hits in the 240s, 250s, because he's going to try to pull so much. And then when he goes over to, outside of New York, that's probably where he's going to hit better. It's probably outside of New York, to be honest. But I think overall it's not a bad move by by actually both teams, Padres and by the Yankees. But in the long run, the Padres look stupid because they traded all that young talent to the Nationals to get Soto. Then he plays one season.
Was it two seasons?
No,
I think
1 season. He 1 season. He finished off the prior year with the Padres, and then he played last.
Yeah, so one full season.
Yeah. And one of the guys that they gave up, James Wood, I am a huge fan. This dude is going to be a stud. And he was part of that trade that got sent to the Nationals. Even C.J. Abrams he started to really look good towards the end of the season for the Nationals over there at shortstop. So if C.J. Abrams can continue to do what he does, I think Robert Hassel was part of that trade. He's still in the minors as well. James Wood, I'm telling you, James Wood he's going to be a superstar. He's going to be like I would compare him maybe to a little bit like he has like a Harris or a Judge build. He's a center fielder. He's like 6'6", 6'7", just raw talent. He's left-handed, but the difference is that he runs like he's a 5'8", 165-pound guy. He's fast. So I'm interested to see what he's going to end up being. But the Padres, I just think overall just made a huge mistake giving up all that talent if they didn't plan on keeping Soto around. If anything, why don't you get rid of someone like Machado Bogarts. You know, the guys that you signed and keep Soto. You know, he's the younger of the two, and I actually think he's more talented than both of them as well.
Well, Soto had the best batting average out of both of those two. Soto was 275. Machado batted 258. Tatis 257. I'm sorry, Bogarts batted 285.
Yeah. So, like I said, I think overall the Padres, you know, depending on what the Padres got for that haul, if those Yankee minor leaguers, if they end up working out, I think overall the Padres, I think they made a mistake if they hadn't planned on keeping Soto around. But I'm actually wondering if there was something going on in the locker room that caused them to make this trade and not try, because they caught fire at the end of last year. They seemed to be doing a lot better. You know, they actually almost made the playoffs after looking, you know, like they were going to be out of it for so long. And they ended up finishing above 500, which if you look probably like the last like 35 games, you thought no way they were going to finish over 500. So,
Yeah.
you know, I probably actually, if I was the Padres, I probably would have played out to the All-Star break. And if it looked like it was going to be the same thing, I think I would have probably sent Soto off to a contender that maybe would have even given you a bigger haul.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that might have overpaid.
Yeah, so and we're all gonna find this out as soon as baseball starts. But let's go ahead and jump into football. AFC playoff race is tight. I mean, it is tight. This is some exciting stuff. So I have a couple teams that I feel are already locked in. Obviously the Ravens at 10-3, I got them locked in to the playoffs. Dolphins, even though they lost to the Titans and look like shit yesterday.
Yeah. Well,
they're going to make playoffs. And I got the
no Tyreek Hill.
Chiefs are making playoffs. Like this, you know what I mean? But what were we going to say?
I said no Tyreek Hill.
Is he going to end up playing this upcoming week?
They're calling him. I think they said he's day-to-day with an ankle injury.
He finished the game. He came back in the second half. But
he came back on the on their final drive.
Yeah.
He came back in on their final drive, but he was just a motion man. I don't even think they threw the ball to him.
So did you know that the Dolphins are the first team to blow a 2-scored lead, I think with like 2:55 left in the game?
With 3 minutes.
Yeah. That's unbelievable. But so let's go ahead and jump into some of these scenarios here, Mike. So over there in the AFC South, okay, you got the Jags in at 8-5, first place. They're the number 4 seed. Colts at 7-6, 7th seed. Texans 7-6, 8th seed. Originally, I really thought that the Texans and the Colts would make the playoffs. The Texans are losing guys at the worst time. They lost.
Injuries are killing them.
Tank Dell is on the IR now, and Collins went out after his first reception in the first quarter last week with a calf injury. They don't even know if he's going to play on Sunday. CJ Stroud is in concussion protocol. They've already pretty much come out and said he is more than likely not going to play. So this week they play at Tennessee. So they don't play a very strong team, even though Tennessee did just beat the Dolphins. And let's be honest, Henry has owned the Texans like he's here. If Collins ends up not playing, Tank Dell is out on IR, and Stroud doesn't play due to concussion, they're going to be starting Davis Mills, and their top 2 wide receivers will be Noah Brown and Robert Woods. I don't think that's going to cut it. And the week after that, they play Cleveland.
Is the Browns.
And I got Cleveland in that game. So
you know what though? Cleveland can't figure them out. I mean, what team is going to what version of them is going to show up? Well,
look at they're very good at home. That defense is very good at home. They're a very good home team. But we're getting to the Browns in a second. I still have the Jaguars winning the division, but they do. I think they're going to end up losing to Baltimore this week, but they finished up the season at Tampa Bay, home against Carolina, at Tennessee. I see them going 3-1. Yeah. They're going to win the division. The Colts, I have making it. Okay, they're 7-6. Home against Pittsburgh, at Atlanta, home against Vegas, home against Houston.
You know what? I said it, I think, last week. That Texans Colts game can be huge.
It could be
for a final, potentially a final playoff spot.
It very much could be, but I really believe the Colts can beat Pittsburgh, Atlanta, and Vegas. I really believe they can win all three of those games and go into the final week with 10 wins, which I think is going to probably be enough to get them in. I'm actually out because of these injuries. I think I'm going to be out on
on Houston.
It was a great run. It was a great story. I think they have a lot to build off of. But with all these young guys getting hurt, and I think if they win this or lose this week, they fall to 7-7. Let's say they lose to Cleveland, they're sitting at 7-8. It's just, unfortunately, I just don't think there's going to be room for them as much as I know we want to see them in there. I think it would be great to see Stroud in the playoffs. I just don't think it's going to end up happening.
So I'm looking here. So who do you have out then? Denver?
No. Well, we're going to talk about this. This jump.
Oh, Buffalo.
I mean, ultimately, we're talking about. We'll keep going. We'll keep going. So the AFC North, right? I have been saying since we did the first predictions like 4 weeks ago, we were already starting to talk about playoffs. I've always been high on the Browns making it, and I think they're going to. Now they can go 2-2 right here. They're home against Chicago. I got them winning that game. They're at Houston. I think that game they're going to also win. I think they're going to beat the Jets at home, and then they're at Cincinnati. So they could be an 11-win team.
They could go 4-0 in those final four.
They could. They very much could. Okay, but I'm in on the Browns. I think the right now I got the Colts and I got the Browns right now are so far who I'm selecting as two of my other three teams that are going to make it into the playoffs. What do you think? Who? All right, let's just break everything down, and we're.
No, I'm looking at something else right now. I'm looking at who the Browns play versus who the Ravens play.
Well, the Ravens are going to win their division. I'm 100% sure.
They got a 2-game lead.
They do. They're going to win 12 games at least. They're going to win 12 games at least. They're going to end up being the number one.
But they're not going to be easy games.
No, they're not.
Jacksonville, at San Francisco, home against Miami, and home against the Steelers.
Yeah.
It is possible. I'm not saying it's likely. It's possible they lose those first 3 games.
I don't know. I just think the Ravens are a bit of a team to blow this, and I think they're going to end up being the number 1 seed because I think the Dolphins are actually going to lose to the Cowboys. I think with the way Dallas is playing with they're playing with so much confidence. The offense is just looking good. Dak's looking like he's playing at MVP level. They have the defense to probably slow down the Dolphins. So I got Dallas winning that game. So I really believe the Dolphins are going to lose that game, which is going to take them out of the number 1 seed. And I think with that would give Baltimore, because I think Baltimore will beat the Jaguars. You got to remember Lawrence is hurt, his ankle, even though he looked pretty good. That Ravens defense is no joke, and they will get after the quarterback. And if he's not mobile enough, it is going to be long. Don't forget, they didn't look the same without Christian Kirk, who's on IR as well. Yeah. Once you take out Calvin Ridley, it's pretty much game over for them, and I don't see ETN running over anyone. So with that, let's move on to the Steelers. Steelers are 7-6. They're at Indy, home against Cincinnati, at Seattle, at Baltimore. So they're on the road 3 of the last 4 games. That's rough.
I don't see Pittsburgh.
I don't either, and I think they're a fraud. I don't even think they. To be honest, I think they lose all 3 of those road games. I think they ended up being. I think they go 8-9, and Tomlin has his first losing record as a head coach. So Bengals. As much as I want to say the Bengals, it's just Jake Browning's playing really good. He's thrown for 856 yards in 3 games. He's got 77 rushing yards. He's got 6 total touchdowns and 2 interceptions. He's looked pretty good. He looks like he can carry the offense well, but he's no Joe Burrow. They play Minnesota at home this week. They could potentially win. They could potentially win against Pittsburgh. But I think at Kansas City and home against Cleveland, I do think they will lose those 2 games. They're going to end up finishing, I think, 9-8, and they're just going to miss out on the playoffs. As much as I'd like to see the Bengals in there, I just don't think it's going to be enough. I just don't.
Yeah, I could see the 2-2 finishing out the season. Real quick, shout out to Burrow for loaning his suite to Browning's family so they could come watch him play.
Oh, nice. Good for him. I'll let you take over. Why don't you talk about the Bills? What do you think about the Bills?
I personally think that it's going to be between them and Denver for the final wild card spot. Bills, I think, lose to the Cowboys. They beat the Chargers, especially with the news of Herbert being injured. Supposed to have surgery, or I thought they said he was having surgery today, but I've seen 2 different reports. One that says he's out for the rest of the season, and one said it was depending on what they found when they were doing the surgery. So I think they beat the Chargers, they beat the Patriots, and they lose to the Dolphins in Miami, the final game of the regular season. So I think they go 2-2, finish 9-8. It's between them and Denver, in my opinion, for the last wild card.
Now, don't forget, New England beat the Bills earlier in the season. New England they're going to end up being one of those really pesky teams because of their defense, and they could be one of those teams that is the reason that someone doesn't make the playoffs, and that would be the most Bills thing.
The most Belichick thing on his way out of New England.
No, not him, but Bills, the Buffalo Bills. It would be the most Buffalo Bills thing to lose a game like that with the season on the line. It's just
a game that they should win.
Yes, yeah. Now, let's not forget they gave it to Miami at home. They gave it to Miami that after Miami came off that 70-point, put on the Broncos. They came out and put up only 20 against the Bills. Now the Bills, let's be real, the Bills should have lost to Kansas City. I know everyone's throwing a big deal about that offsides. Did you know Kadarius Toney actually lined up 5 other times offsides?
4.
But I guess the head ref came out and made a statement basically saying that he was so far offsides that it had to be called. But here's my problem.
Well,
why were you not,
it
makes the refs look bad.
Hold on. But a lot of people at first were saying he never checked with the ref. There's a video that came out from a fan that shows him looking over and checking at the ref, but he never looks for the okay, and he looks back.
It's not the ref's job to tell them he's off. You should be looking at the ball and know, oh shit, my whole body's hanging over the line of scrimmage. Let me take a step back. The fact that he lined up offsides that many times, like, this is stuff that you learned in like Pee-wee, man. This is stuff you should have down by the time you're in high school.
Somebody was saying the Chiefs would be the number 1 seed if it wasn't for Kadarius Toney.
They would be the number 1 seed if they had people not taking so much money. The Chiefs are learning what it's like to pay your quarterback as much money as they're paying Mahomes. Think about it. They're paying Mahomes all that money, Kelsey all that money, Chris Jones all that money. So when you start paying all these guys this much money, especially the quarterback position, you got to cut somewhere else. But the problem is that they cut in the wrong spot. Like when they trade for Kadarius Toney last year, he was supposed to be their problem solver at wideout, but I didn't think he was really that great on the Giants outside of that one really good game that he had. He was always hurt. He was never anything special. And
I think a lot of people were counting on Sky Moore to take a huge leap too.
Oh, come on, man. And anyone who was really thinking Sky Moore was going to be a difference, you're just playing jokes on yourself. But so you're out on the Bills as well, right?
I'm out on the Bills. And the flip side of that, Broncos, I think, go 3-1 in their last 4. They lose to the Lions. They win in Denver against the Patriots. They win in Denver against the Chargers, and then they win in Vegas to close the season.
That's exactly what I have the scenario is, and I have the Broncos filling in that last playoff spot. There'll probably be a one and done, but I mean, with all the issues that were going on with them, I mean, for them to make the playoffs, that's pretty spectacular. I mean, for a minute you were thinking that defense was supposed to be, an elite defense. Then they got, that 70 put on them, and actually they.
Well, to start the season 1-5 and make the playoffs.
Yeah, and they should have beat the Texans when they played the Texans. That was one of Wilson's worst games. I actually watched that game, one of his worst games of the year, and they had a chance, and he threw a pick in the end zone, basically to end the game. So they really could actually be tied with the Chiefs at 8-5, but I still think the Chiefs are going to hold on to that division. It's going to come down to division record, and I think the Chiefs are going to end up getting that over them. So,
well, yeah. Did you look at who the Chiefs have left?
Chiefs are making playoffs, whether in my lock.
Patriots, Raiders, Bengals, Chargers.
Yeah, they'll be fine. With that said, let's move on to the NFC. So the teams I locked in, obviously the 49ers have actually already claimed a playoff spot.
After Green Bay lost Monday night.
Cowboys are not missing playoffs. Lions aren't going to not win that division. Eagles will not miss the play. In fact, the Eagles have a cakewalk schedule for the rest of the year, although they are playing a little bit better.
Unfortunately, I think Dallas is not going to hold on to that division.
It's going to be tough for them. They
have a much harder remaining schedule than the Eagles.
Yeah, so
can they do it? Yes, but Eagles are playing bottom feeder teams.
Yeah, so the Eagles just went through their gauntlet, and now they get a little bit of a walk into the playoffs. The Cowboys, on the other hand, have had a walk up into this part of the season, and now they get a little bit of a gauntlet. They got the Dolphins. They got
the Bills, Dolphins, Lions, Commanders.
Which I really do believe they're going to win 2 out of 3 of those games, but it's really hard to beat 3 potential playoff teams in a row. It's not always going to happen.
It'd be 4 if you count the Eagles game.
Yeah, that's true, but they gave it to the Eagles. They already handled the Eagles. So with that said, let's jump into the NFC South, Mike. Bucks, Atlanta, New Orleans, they're all tied at 6-7. A freaking joke, right? So
yeah,
the Bucks and Atlanta are tied in divisional wins at 3 apiece. So 3-1 on the outside at 2-2. What's sad about this is that even at 6-7, you can still make the playoffs in the NFC. It's a joke. Outside of the top 4 teams, I just don't see anyone that great. Outside of
I don't see any of the wild card teams winning their matchup in the playoffs, with the exception of whoever's the second place team out of the East.
Yeah, Cowboys,
because that's gonna be Dallas or Philadelphia. Most likely, I mean, they're going to be the 5 seed. They're going to play whoever wins the NFC South.
Yeah, which they should be. But if the Eagles are number 5 seed, I don't see them going on the road and playing like the Cowboys or the Lions and winning. You know what I mean? So with that said, so like we were saying, Bucks, Atlanta, New Orleans Saints. So the Bucks, I think, looking at this, they might have the harder of the schedules out of all of them. They're at Green Bay this week. Then they're home against Jacksonville Saints, and then they finish off the season at Carolina. So Green Bay is going to be a tough game. I know they just lost, but Green Bay is fighting for a playoff spot as much, and it's in Lambeau. Tough place to play. It's going to be cold. They could potentially lose that game. They're definitely not going to beat the Jaguars. Jaguars are just a much better team. And then you got a divisional game with the Saints, and that can go either way. So if they can stay healthy, that's going to be a real big thing. But first off, they can't lose to Green Bay or Jacksonville. That's the bottom line. If they can beat both those teams, they'll be okay. But I think if they go 1-1, it's going to be tough because look at someone like the Saints. The Saints play the Giants. Now they do play the Rams, and the Rams have been playing really good football lately.
Yeah, they
At
have.
Tampa Bay, Atlanta. Then you got Atlanta at Carolina, which they're going to win. Then they play Indianapolis, probably going to lose. At Chicago, they're probably going to win. At New Orleans. So I think with that said, I actually think it's going to be Atlanta is going to end up winning that division and being the team that moves on. Just because I think they're going to beat Carolina, which is going to put them to 7-7. They're lose to Indy, which puts them at 7-8. And then I actually think they beat Chicago and the Saints. So I think at the end of the day, they're going to be 9-8, and I think that's going to be enough to win the division.
If there's anybody that's going to play spoiler, though, it's going to be the Saints. The reason why I say that, they have the Giants this week.
Well, the Giants, don't forget, 3-0 now that Jones isn't playing.
Yeah, no, I know that. But they could beat the Giants. It's in New Orleans. They could beat the Giants. They'll lose in LA to the Rams. But here's where they could play spoiler. Those last 2 weeks are both division games, the Bucks and the Falcons.
Well, if they win both those divisional games, then they're probably going to end up winning the division. Because that'll give them, they'll be 3-1. And on top of that, it'll also give them 2 divisional wins, which they need, because then they would be tied divisional wins within their division between all 3 of those teams.
But I see this division actually coming down to the end of the season, week 17.
It very much could be.
Week 18.
Or we could have a surprise and one of those teams somehow goes 4-0 and it doesn't even matter what the last week ends up being. You know what I mean? So,
yeah.
But I do think it's going to end up being Atlanta. I think I would prefer the Bucks in the playoffs, but I do think it's going to end up being Atlanta unless the Saints can somehow upset the Rams, which I don't think will happen. Who you got?
Fuck, I don't know. I mean, it could be, honestly, it could be any of those 3.
It really could. But thanks for making a pick, though.
Yeah, one of those 3. One of those 3. I'm not going with Carolina to win that division.
Yeah. So moving on to the NFC North. Yeah, you got Minnesota at the 6th seed, Green Bay at the 7th seed. Kind of sad news over there in Minnesota. The Cinderella story of Josh Dobbs it's done. Nick Mullins, who we've had the opportunity to watch as Niner fans. Nick's not a terrible quarterback. He's not. He's not going to be a guy that's going to go out and throw for 350 and 4 touchdowns, but he's a pretty good game manager. And I think if Justin Jefferson comes back and he can play this week, with T.J. Hawkinson, which Nick Mullins loves to throw to the tight end. He is a tight end specialist. Tight end is his best friend. I think Minnesota can be okay, but they got a terrible schedule to end the season. So at Cincinnati, home.
Oh God, I just looked at it.
Home against Detroit, home against Green Bay, at Detroit. I think Detroit wins both those games. Best case scenario for Minnesota is they go 2-2.
Yeah,
have to win at Cincinnati this week. I believe to keep their play alive. If they go into Cincinnati and lose, they're not making the playoffs because I think they're going 1-3. If Detroit has the number 3 seed locked up and there's no way they can get to 2 seed, maybe they rest starters that last week.
I'm looking here. I'm counting who the 7 teams making the playoffs are.
It's going to be weird. It's going to be weird.
It's the seventh team, in my opinion, is going to come down to Minnesota or Green Bay.
Yeah, because I don't think.
I think the Rams make it. If you look at their remaining schedule, Commanders, Saints, Giants, and Niners, I think they go 3-1.
Oh, for sure, they're going 3-1. And on top of that, Stafford, his last 3 games, 10 touchdowns, 1 interception. They've gone 2-1 in those games. And they just gave Baltimore, the number 1 seed in the AFC, all they could handle. Took them to overtime, lost because of that punt return by the Ravens. They could have ultimately just tied, the Ravens, but yes,
I think the final playoff spots wild card is going to come down to that week 17 Packers Vikings.
Packers Vikings. Yeah, you know what? No, I think you're right, because I'm out. I don't think, as much as I think, since Seattle could. Seattle plays Philadelphia. They're gonna. It is in Seattle, so there is a small window for Seattle to win that game. They're very tough to beat in Seattle, but I don't think Geno Smith is going to play again. He might be out still with that groin.
Okay, even if Seattle loses that game and then they win out against the Titans, the Steelers, and the Cardinals, they're still behind the Rams.
Well, yeah. So the best case scenario for Seattle is they would finish 3rd in the division, because they're 1-4. That's their divisional record. So there's no way they can leapfrog the Rams unless they have a better record than them, and which they're not going to have. They're not going to have a record. So the only way Seattle wins and takes a playoff spot, I think they're going to have to go 3-1. They're going to have to go in 3-1. And right now they're on a.
They have to go 3-1, and they need help from Minnesota and Green Bay to lose.
Yeah, like I said, Minnesota could realistically not win a game for the rest of the year. They realistically could happen. Green Bay, they have a much easier schedule. So they're home against Tampa Bay, they're at Carolina, at Minnesota, home against Chicago. Chicago's not trying to win that last game. Let's be real. That Chicago's not going to be trying to win that last game. They're going to be trying to, get
an earlier draft pick. They're already going to have the number 1 pick from the Panthers.
Yeah. So I could see worst case scenario, I think, for Green Bay is they go 2-2. But that schedule, they could go 3-1. They really could go 3-1.
They could go 4-0.
They could, but I see them losing one of those games only because of the inconsistency that has been Green Bay. They just did not look good yesterday when they played freaking the New York Giants.
They need to get a running game going, is what they need to do.
They just need to get something going. They just need some kind of consistency. If they can find consistency for this next 4 games, then yeah, they could win them out. But it's weird. Like, one week they look like a playoff team, and the next week you're like, what the fuck is this garbage? So for sure, this is who I got going in. Obviously, we have the 49ers, Cowboys, Lions. I got the Rams finishing probably as the 6th seed. Oh boy, what I said.
You didn't say Philadelphia, but obviously Philadelphia.
Atlanta's going to win the division. So I need one more team, huh?
Minnesota, Green Bay, or Seattle?
No, Mike. It could be the Bucks. It could be the Saints. It could be Minnesota. It could be Green Bay, and it could be Seattle. Because, like I said, I don't know if Minnesota can win another game.
Do you think there's a second team going to make the playoffs out of the South? I don't.
They could. Think about it. Seattle, Green Bay, Saints, Atlanta, Bucks. All 5 of those teams are 6 and 7. So, what happens when Minnesota loses to Cincinnati? Like I said, I really believe Minnesota might end up losing out the rest of the games unless Detroit sits their guys. I'm out on Minnesota. I am out on Minnesota. I think it's going to come down to Seattle or Green Bay. And you know what? I'm going to go. You know what I'm going to say? I'm going to go Seattle. I think Seattle does lose to Philadelphia, and then I think they beat Tennessee, Pittsburgh, and Arizona. And I think they end up finishing 9-8, which is going to get them into the playoffs. What do you think? Now you have to remember the tiebreaker too for non-divisional. I think it's in conference wins. So I'd probably have to go back.
And that's what I'm looking at right now. Currently, I know you said you're out on Minnesota, but currently Minnesota is 6-3 in conference wins. Green Bay is 4-4. Seattle is 5-5.
Well, Seattle
and Seattle has
they're going to go 1-1 in their
So they'll go 6-6.
Yeah. Green Bay on the other hand, they got a chance to get four wins in conference.
Even if they only get 3. I mean, if they get 3, then that puts them at 7-5.
Yeah, I'm still gonna go Seattle. I just think Pete Carroll is gonna rally these guys. Like I said, I do think they're gonna lose against Philadelphia, and then I think they're gonna run the table. Green Bay, they do have the much easier road as far as wins go, but I don't know. At least Seattle has some type of run game. You can run on Tennessee, Pittsburgh, and Arizona.
Yeah. Hey, how long before Geno's healthy? You think he's out this week and he's back next week?
They said he could be out this week. He could be. I don't think it matters who's quarterbacking for Seattle. I think Philadelphia comes back and wins, even though that's going to be a tough game.
So if you're Seattle and you're looking at the rest of your season in a game that most likely you're going to lose no matter who's behind center, you hold Geno out, you give him another week to get healthy, and you put him in as healthy as possible for the final 3 games of the season to give yourself the best playoff push you can.
Yeah. But you never know. Weird things happen all the time in the NFL, and Philly could come into Seattle and lose. Drew Lock, he didn't look absolutely horrible against the Niners. He looked pretty good for like 3 quarters, and then he does what Drew Lock does and didn't look very good in that 4th quarter. But, he was playing against the 49ers defense. Philadelphia's defense is not very good. They're very bad back in.
I'm looking right now. Philadelphia is only a 4-point favorite.
Yeah. I think the one thing about Drew Lock, I understand that he's never been like a great NFL quarterback, but dude will throw it. He's not afraid to challenge or to push the ball downfield. So maybe he's the better start in this scenario. But I will say this: if Seattle beats Philadelphia, they're definitely making playoffs.
Yeah.
And as good as Seattle is, it's really hard also to see them losing 6 games in a row. Don't forget this team was 6-3 at one point. Oh, sorry, 5 games in a row.
Now, what's that do if Philadelphia loses? That puts Dallas a game ahead of them, saying that Dallas beats the Bills. Dallas at that point could afford to go 2-1 in their final 3 and still win the division.
Yeah, if Seattle beats the Eagles, I think that puts a huge damper on Philadelphia. Even going to be able to host I don't think they'll win a division, and they're going to end up playing on the road, and it's not going to look good for Philadelphia. So, but so who are you picking in your final spot?
I'm going to go Green Bay.
Okay. You got Green Bay. I got Seattle. We'll see how this plays out. So, you got anything else you want to add? Or, we're about 53 minutes into this thing. So, probably...
one stat on Purdy. And I haven't shared this with you. He is second in the NFL in passing yards with 3,553. He has the least amount of passing attempts of any quarterback in the top 20.
Yeah,
in that category.
Stroud has 85 more pass attempts than him.
He's got 82 less than CJ Stroud, and CJ Stroud is 78 passing yards ahead of him?
Yes,
something like that.
Play this week. Brock Purdy should pass him as long as Purdy stays healthy. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting. But I still think Dak right now is the favorite
for the MVP.
For the MVP. But like I said, he's got a tough stretch coming in front of him. So I think it's if Dak wants that MVP, he's gonna and he balls out, he's gonna be the clear front runner. And I have no.
So if they win their division, you say Dak's MVP.
Even if they're a wild card team, if he continues to play and he can't do anything on the defensive side of the ball. If he's putting up 30 points and they lose 30-35, like there's nothing he can do about that. You know what I mean? It's just one of those situations where he did his job, just the other half of the team didn't. So I don't think you should always consider win-loss ratio when it comes to looking at MVP. I think you need to look how the MVP performs.
Individual stats.
And how good that team would perform without that person. And let's be real, the Cowboys would struggle mightily without Dak Prescott in the way he has been playing this year. I think Purdy can get hurt, and I still think the 49ers would still win. I'm not saying it's not because Purdy's not good. I just think that there's enough weapons to pick up, to pick up the slack of Purdy not being in there. But the other thing about Purdy is I always mention this, everyone wants to be like, oh, the yak yards. Well, actually, his yak yard percentage is lower than 5 MVP winners. He's under 50%. He's like at 48% yak yards. Patrick Mahomes, this last MVP, was like something like 53%. The only one that had a lower yak percentage of the last 5 MVPs was Lamar Jackson. He was somewhere around like 46%. Actually, I might have actually even been 43%. But
but you got to look. How much does that guy run too?
Yeah, Lamar Jackson's like, if you're talking about Purdy and Lamar Jackson, you're talking about 2 totally different quarterbacks. You got a pocket passer who's always looking to pass. Lamar Jackson, he doesn't see if he doesn't like what he sees on the field, he can tuck and run and take that thing 20, 30 yards, no problem. So they're 2 totally different quarterbacks. So
and it's not a knock on either one. It's just completely different playing style.
Yeah, and actually, I've heard some people even have Lamar Jackson over Brock Purdy as far as MVP race. And Lamar Jackson's actually quietly having like a career year. He's having some of his best stuff. His completion percentage is the highest of his career. He's like 3rd in yards a game, or 2nd yards a game, something like that in his career. He's got a couple other stats where he's like in the top 3 of what he's done over his career. So he's quite
well, and he just got that contract this last offseason, right?
Yeah, and let's be real. What would the Ravens be?
One of the guys that's actually living up to it.
Yeah,
it's not very often.
And the Ravens would not be like, yeah, they have that defense, but their offense would struggle mightily without him. So I think it's really going to come down to if Brock Purdy and Dak Prescott continue to have the seasons that they're having, and let's say the Niners beat the Ravens, right? And let's just say Brock Purdy throws for like 300 and like 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, and Dak Prescott still looks good, but doesn't look quite as good against some of these other teams, then I think you could really hold an argument for Brock Purdy being the MVP, because that means he would have beaten the Cowboys, the Eagles, and the Ravens, which I think in the MVP race, you have to look, okay,
who the opponents are.
Yeah, well, how well did he do against the people that he's also running up against? Dak Prescott against the Niners had 3 interceptions. Let's not forget about that. So we will see, And the other thing, too, is everyone talks about that little skid of 3 games that Brock Purdy had. Even though they shouldn't have lost against the Browns, that came down to special teams. But Dak Prescott, for like the first 6 games of this year, he only threw 6 touchdowns. 6 touchdowns and like 4 interceptions. And he didn't do anything during the first 6 games of the year. So, like, I hear a lot of analysts, they're always like, oh, well, Brock Purdy had these 3 games. I wish if he had a time machine to go back and change those, then I would put him at the MVP front. But then no one talks about the slow start that Dak Prescott had. He didn't look that great at the beginning of the year. No one was talking about MVP Dak out of the first 6 weeks. In fact, Dak Prescott just barely got put into the conversation, as opposed to, Brock Purdy was talked about the MVP for like the first 5 weeks. You had that skid, and since the bye week, he's looked up, obviously one of the top 3 quarterbacks in the NFL.
Well, not only that, so their loss against Cleveland put him in position for a game-winning field goal.
Yeah, he balled out when he should have. Yeah, they lost to Cincinnati, but I don't think that was totally on his. He did have a couple of ugly interceptions, but he did. Well, he threw for like 340 yards, didn't he?
365.
Yeah, so.
And another 57 rushing.
Yeah, so he had over 400 yards by himself. I mean, that's a pretty good game, but the defense they weren't stopping Cincinnati at all. He can't play on both sides of the ball, you know?
No, Jamar Chase that game had 10 for 100 and a touchdown.
Yeah, that was when Cincinnati started looking like they were going to and then all of a sudden you just have Joe Burrow go down, and now Justin Herbert's down for the year. And what do you think about Justin Herbert, Mike? So he's out now for the rest of the year. This is his 4th year in the league, and he still has no playoff wins. Don't forget he blew that, 25, 30-point lead last year in the playoffs to the Jags. Yeah. You can try to blame that all you want on the defense giving up points, but at the end of the day, your job as offense is still, no matter what the score is to go out there and continue to put up points no matter what the score of the game is. It's a playoff game. This is not the regular season. So with that said.
Well, but just like you said, can't play both sides of the ball.
No.
I mean, he went out and did what he needed to do. He got him out to a huge lead, and then the defense gave it up.
Yeah, but he should have continued to do what he did in the first half. You got to play all 4 quarters no matter what it comes down to. So, but it's interesting because he was part of that really big quarterback class, and everyone has at least a
playoff win.
Who's Baker Mayfield? So we're gonna see. So with that, thank you for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed the show. We will be back probably. Usually we try to do 2 shows, but I don't think we're gonna do another one this week. We're saving for Monday of next week. See how all these games come out and see if we change our mind on some of this playoff stuff. But so with that said, thank you for joining the show, and we will see you on the next one.